Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Harry Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. We're happy to turn our attention to baseball here. I know that folks are a little disappointed with the recent performance, but the Tigers have been playing very well overall. And we had a draft preview with the Tigers minor league folks, and wanted to get Jerry on because he wasn't on the preview, but we wanted to get him on to review some of these guys, since these are the young guys that they follow, and then talk about what's been going on in the minor leagues and then the major leagues.
It's fine. I mean, he's a high schooler. You can't expect him to be hitting 116 immediately, but I would personally like to have seen a couple that maybe hit in the triple digits there. They also measured his throws from shortstop. I really liked the strength on his arm. He was sitting 85, 86, which is really, really good, and it looked effortless. It looked like he was putting no real push behind it. One thing that I found out after they had drafted him that I thought was really interesting, his brother, who is currently at University of Florida, was kind of the same size he is right now when he was drafted, and he was able to put on 25, 30 pounds of muscle, and he really was able to fill his frame out. So that has me excited of what he might be able to do and the kind of power he might be able to bring forth as he gets older and matures.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We talked about that a little bit in the preview show, but that's fascinating to me with how young these guys are. And it's true with other sports. It's true with football because a lot of that depends on your ability to bulk up. It's true with basketball. We saw it with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the fact that he not only grew height-wise, but he put on a lot of muscle. That changed. Everybody saying, oh, well, that was a miss. There's 15 teams or whatever that passed on him. At that level, when he was playing in Greece and you didn't know that he was going to grow, that's an impossible guess to make. But at least then you're gathering some data with this kid. I did read a write-up that said that they expect him to be able to put on weight. You hope that for everybody, but you and I both know people that may be more predisposed to being able to pack on weight, and then there's other people that it doesn't matter what they eat and what they do, they're just not going to put on an ounce. And but if you have some family information, that's an interesting tie here because, yeah, if you fill this kid out and he does grow a little bit, maybe even, and adds on some muscle, then that probably changes his profile and raises his potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and seeing his brother do it, it's in his genetics. So you feel a little more comfortable with saying, yeah, I think we can, get him a little bulkier. Maybe instead of the 5 home run power, now we're looking at the 15 home run power, which completely changes if you're an above average defensive shortstop. If you can hit 15 bombs, hit for average, and be above average defensively, you're looking at a very, very good player.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's what's interesting. I believe, I don't remember who it was, but somebody from the Tigers minor league report, one of your colleagues, basically predicted that they would go for somebody like this, somebody that profiles as a shortstop but may get moved around because obviously you're buying the skill set, you're buying the fact that he's got an arm. We saw what you can do with the shortstop this year. Apparently you can take a guy that's been in the big leagues for years and move him to center field and then make him an all-star. We didn't really have that on the docket before the year started, but those shortstops obviously do have a tendency to have a lot of tools. They have the movement, so they've got the feet, they've got the arm to get it across the diamond, so you can move them over to third, over to second. Maybe they can play some outfield. So you're buying into those tools. But yeah, if you're a shortstop, you can get away with a lesser bat. And if you have, like you said, the difference between 15 and 5 is exponential. But if you move to a different position, that's not necessarily the case. If you move to outfield, or if they got to move you around a little bit, they're going to expect a little bit more production on the offensive side.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's interesting about Yost. I'm glad you layered that in with the family piece, because when I was reading Joe's article and researching for our interview, that it was interesting to kind of see the first few. We won't run through all the picks, of course, because there's a lot of picks and it would take up the whole segment. But I thought the first few were interesting. You had Yost. We already talked about him a little bit. And then they went for guys that they seemed to like to go after in the draft. They did the shortstop with seemingly good hands, good contact, good plate discipline. He's got some defensive tools. Then in the next round, they go with a catcher that's got some pop. That seemed familiar to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And watching his swing, I'm very excited for what Michael's going to bring. That's a very smooth-looking left-handed swing, and you can definitely see the power in his legs. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people early on, just because he was so low on like we were saying before, the national rankings. I think Pipeline had him ranked in the 200s or something like that. And I think as he also develops, we're going to see that maybe that was a little bit low for him.
Yeah, and obviously that's what you're betting on with these guys, because there probably is the biggest difference between the scouting of the services of these pundits and everything and what you can do internally. Not because not that they're not good and they don't know what they're doing, but there's so much nuance to this. We were talking about this with Jaden when he was in studio for the preview, and how the Tigers, fitting to the name of our show, they go out and they gather intel. They meet with these guys, because that's really where you get a lot of information. Like, sure, you want to look through the data. You want to look at certain things with their stance and how they move on the field and all of those kinds of things. But getting to know the guy, I feel like, is one of the bigger indicators, because at that age, a lot of it is about how hard you're going to work, because sure, the skills are great, but if you're not going to work hard with those skills, then you're probably not going to get as far. But a guy that maybe doesn't have as many of the tools, but is going to be a character guy, he's going to fit into the locker room culture, and he's going to be able to make himself the best version. That's what you're looking for in a player.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it's really interesting with Michael specifically, because he was committed to Yale. So that tells me that he's already a thinker. He's already going to be willing to sit with the coaching staff and hammer this stuff out to get the best version of himself he can.
Yeah, and that's always a good sign, and so hopefully that will bode well. And you can't have too many catchers, because obviously they are in a good situation. That's to me one of the best things about the Major League roster that maybe hadn't been talked about as much, because there's so many narratives right now. You've got the Baez one, we mentioned that, Torkelson and Mize having very good seasons, McKinstry having an all-star season, Riley Green developing into a superstar. All of those things are all great narratives, but one of the things that I think is one of the narratives that hasn't been focused on as much is Dingler taking that step up to truly being the number one catcher, and then Rogers being the backup. He's a great backup. He's a great veteran to have in your clubhouse. He's a great leader, but Dingler, with his athletic profile and what he's able to provide via the bat and defensively, that's a great number one catcher. Then you got Rogers, and now you got these other guys in the system, some of whom are in the minor leagues right now. You just drafted another one that could work their way up and eventually be a backup when Rogers is no longer in the picture.
Right. Yeah, and these guys are key to keeping the staff going in the right direction too. They make the calls, they help guide the pitcher, and so having as many catchers as you can get and having really smart ones is very important. And then if they can bring the bat alongside with them, that's all the more better.
Exactly. It's an exponential effect, because I think it was actually in one of the hockey interviews that I did last week, but we were talking about, he was mentioning Pudge Rodriguez and how big of an effect he had, but one of the reasons he had such a large effect is because a catcher coming in, that's both, he could hit, he was obviously a good team leader, but you're making an exponential effect on the pitching staff. You're improving everybody if you're that good of a catcher, and I feel like that's happening. And then you've got that at the major league roster, Rogers is helping Dingler. They both can help the young guys. And then now it's permeating your roster, and you have a lot of uniformity in the catchers, and they can work with the pitchers, which is obviously, a key position. But I want to talk about some of those pitchers that they acquired in the draft here, some of the first few rounds of folks, because those are kind of interesting too, and a couple fit the narratives that we were talking before the draft. But we'll come back after the break with Jerry McKinnon of Tigers Minor League Report. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.